Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Mormon Atheist. All right, apostates, we are on a roll today with our series here. This is going to be episode 14, chapter 12. Okay, so we are, for all of the newcomers coming in, we are doing William Morgan's book, Illustrations of Masonry, and we are going through it and relating it to Mormonism. Okay, and this is a series. So this is episode 14, chapter 12. Okay, apostates, we are on page 64. And we are continuing from the last video. In the last video, we were talking about the light and what that was. And we are going to continue this video. We're going to continue on. So we're on page 64. And on the last episode, we ended on the questions and answers of the light. Okay. And so I will read where we left off on the last video, and then I will point out where we stopped, and then where we're gonna pick up on this video. Okay. So on page 64, on Illustrations of Masonry, William Morgan's book, the candidate is asked, after your oath of obligations, what was said to you? Answer, I was asked what I most desired. Your answer, more light. Okay, this is where we stopped at, and then I went on a light tangent about the light and the thread on the video that I did called the light thread. Right, that's really kind of where the series starts at, is with that video. And then we pick up. All right, so let's continue. On being brought to light, what did you discover different from before? Answer, at one point of the compass elevated above the square, which denoted light in this degree, but as one point was yet in obscurity, it was to remind me that I was yet one material point in the dark representing Masonry. Okay, I go into all of this on the last video. What did you next discover? Answer, the worshipful master approaching me from the east, under the sign and dew guard of a fellow craft mason, who presented me with his right hand, in token of brotherly love and confidence, and proceeded to give me the passcript and word of a fellow craft mason, and bid me rise and salute the junior and senior wardens, and convince me that I had been regularly passed to the degree of a fellow craft, and had the sign, grip, and word of a fellow craft mason. What did you discover next? Answer, the worshipful master approaching me a second time from the east, who presented me with a lambskin or white apron, which he said he hoped I would continue to wear with honor to myself, and satisfaction and advantage to the brethren. Okay, so you see the stuff is continuously repeated over and over again. The lambskin, the white apron, right? All of this kind of stuff. Joseph Smith was in the lambskin order, right? Remember, in Southwick's book, he talks about uh, the maker of the lambskin aprons, right? He's called the Hatter. Okay, now in context, we're very much talking about the magician, okay, of Southwick's book. And so the Hatter is the only one that knows how to make these lambskin aprons. So then, if you take that into the Mormon story, Joseph Smith is the only one that can make the lambskin aprons. He is specifically the lambskin order, right? So this stuff has prevalence, okay? What are you next presented with? Answer: the working tools of a fellow craft mason. What are they? Answer: the plumb, square, and level. What do they teach? In parentheses, William Morgan says, this is a little Morgan footnote, I think this question ought to be how explained. Okay, that's his footnote. Listen to the words. I think this question ought to be, in parentheses, how explained. Okay, so the question was, what do they teach? Morgan gives a side note, and then the answer. The plumb is an instrument made use of by operative masons. Here we go again with operative masons, okay? To raise perpendiculars, the Jachin and Boaz, the pillars, right, the columns, the square to square their work, and the level to lay horizontals. But we, as free and accepted masons, the masons of new, right? Operative masonry is dead. Operative masons are the masons of old. Okay, I am going to repeat that over and over and over again, okay? Because that is the point here. This thing is being created, okay? But we, as free and accepted masons, the masons of new, are taught to make use of them for more noble and glorious purposes. Okay, now these words, we are to make use of them for more noble and glorious purposes. Okay, so right here, again, they're changing things, they're altering stuff, right? So why are they altering these things? Because they don't know, right? It's repeatedly said over and over again. These people are creating this new thing called speculative Freemasonry. So we, as free and accepted Masons, are taught to make use of them for a more noble and glorious purpose. Okay, that is the excuse. That's the cover, right? So they can't just say, we made this shit up, right? And we're just making it up as we go, right? Because who's going to buy into that? You know what I'm saying? So now you change it and make it sound authoritative and make it sound historical and ancient and, you know, all of these things. Now people are like, whoa, the ancients? What? The ancients? Huh? You know, and then especially in the era that we're talking about, right? We're coming out of the Age of Enlightenment, right? The Victorian era, the the 1700s, okay? And we're coming into, modern day free world. you know, the new America. Okay, so it's like there's like a sense of opportunity as well here, right? They're hoodwinking people, right? They're blindfolding people, hoodwinked. But in our language, hoodwink means they're duping people, right? In in all of this literature, these are the kinds of words they use, right? These people are being duped by the pretenders, okay? So you got to pay attention to this language. Like everything on this thing is you have to pay attention. This is why in previous videos I have repeatedly said you got to pay attention to these words, the language, right? They're using language. This is specific language. Okay? And you got to pay attention to this stuff or you miss it. And this is the code, the Masonic code that I always talk about on my videos, right? There's this code in these books. And the code is the language, right? The words, okay? And just the fact that a lot of this has simply been erased from history. We get scholars, we get books, we get movies, we get all sorts of shit. But once you actually read the book, Apostate Congregation, how many of you out there are watching this and are like, dude, that is not fucking what I thought at all that book was about? Okay. So do you understand what has happened here? This has been erased out of history. And it's been sillied up and made look stupid, and and it's a tragedy because the church themselves are the ones that have done this. Okay, so this isn't like a random happenstance kind of thing, right? This is legit an effort. Okay, this is an effort to cover this up, to silly up Freemasonry and the Anti-Masonic Movement. Right? Especially the Anti-Masonic Movement, just period, right? Because the common thought of the Anti-Masonic Movement is, oh, that's dumb, that's silly. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. That was just a stupid blip in time, right? Well, there's actually legit historical relevance to that 100% pertains to today's world. These people are warning us in the 1800s about this, and it never stopped. They failed. The movement failed. The Anti-Masonic movement failed. Okay? Speculative Freemasonry won. The religious institution of Masonry, the Church of Masonry, they won. And they have been completely building upon that ever since. Ever since the candidate won office that Bernard talks about, the story changed. Ever since that candidate won, the Anti-Masonic movement died out and the anti-Mormon movement picked up. Okay? Connect these dots, congregation. The plum admonishes us to walk upright in our several stations before God and man, squaring our actions by the square of virtue, and remembering that we are all traveling upon the level of time to that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. Bourne is spelled Bourne. Okay. What were you next presented with? Answer: 3 precious jewels, right? We're seeing this over and over again, right? What were they? Answer, faith, hope, and charity. What do they teach? Answer, faith in God, hope in immortality, and charity to all mankind. Remember that immortality is to the lodge, right? It's not to the person, it's to the lodge. The lodge is immortal, okay? Because this thing is not new, right? It, and so, all right. How were you then disposed of? Answer, I was conducted out of the lodge and invested of what I had been divested, right? So he was escorted out of the lodge and he was invested. He was given back his stuff of what he had been divested. So divested is they took his stuff. He had to change out his clothes. He had to put on the temple garments. And then when everything is over, he goes through all the ceremonies. And when everything's over, he is then invested of his belongings. So he is allowed to change back into his clothes. He's given his keys, his cell phone, his wallet, All right. You understand? So divested and invested. All right. Okay. That ends section first. Okay. Let me get a drink of my mason jar of water here. Okay, congregation, what's our time? Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are doing a super crazy deep dive into William Morgan's book, Illustrations of Masonry, and we are comparing it to Mormonism. Okay. So subscribe to the channel. This channel will never be monetized. So the only way you can support this channel is to subscribe, share the videos, like the videos, hit the bell because I come on at complete random times. That way you can be notified. All that fun stuff. Okay. All right. Section second. Okay. On page 65. Have you ever worked as a fellow craft mason? Answer, I have in speculative. Section second, page 65. Have you ever worked as a fellow craft mason? Answer, I have in speculative. But our forefathers wrought, WROUGHT, both in speculative and operative masonry. Do you understand? In the previous videos, we pointed out that right there is the ruse. We know that operative masonry is dead. There is no such thing as Freemasonry. It does not exist. A group of people, a religious group, are creating this new religious institution. And they are basing it off of the old stories of the Knights Templar. Okay, we have firmly established this. Like there's no question that this is what's happening. This is what the Anti-Masonic Movement is about, apostate congregation. So speculative masonry is this new masonry. It's this new thing. They are creating it. Okay. There is legit no such thing as Freemasonry. All of these books, all of the anti-Masonic literature say that. This is not my opinion. This is not me. This is legit historical fact. These books, the Anti-Masonic Movement, is legitimately historical fact. It really did happen. Okay? What is it about, and why did it happen? And who was involved? These are valid questions. Okay? So we're told over and over and over again, the new Masonry is called speculative Masonry. The forefathers, the ancient Freemasons, the ancients, all of this kind of stuff, the operative Masons, the Masons of old, all of these kinds of words, all of this kind of language represent operative Masonry. It is dead. They are specifically referring to the Knights Templar. Nobody knows anything about the Knights Templar. That is why they are recreating what they call the Restoration. Okay? Relate this to Mormonism. Joseph Smith is he's the restoration of the church, right? The new the new millennium, right? They were in the day they were called millennials, right? The millennial religion, right? The millennials, right? Because they were predicting that the world was going to end in the millennium, right? In the new millennium, which would have been in their day 1900. Okay? So all of these religious groups back then were predicting that the world was going to end. The restoration was in 1900, right? Well, what happens in 1900, apostate congregation, to the church? The church takes on a completely different persona in 1900. They modernize, right? Is the best way to describe it. They become somebody, right? They're now dressing in suits rather than old frontier clothes, right? Now they got suits and they got legit government, right? They're a state now, right? So they're getting government funding now. They're, in 1900, the restoration happened. The church took on a totally, this is why I don't read any of the 1900 literature. I stay in my lane in the 1800s, right? In my time frame, Joseph Smith's era, contemporary to the day. And that's the literature that we talk about and read on this channel. These are why. These kinds of things are why, right? Because it takes on a totally different persona in 1900, in the millennium, as they predicted. Okay? Well, these books, the Anti-Masonic Movement books, the title of this book is a warning, a solemn warning against Freemasonry, addressed to the young men of the United States, 1827. Okay? We're talking about speculative Freemasonry. Does it get any more clear than that? A solemn warning against Freemasonry, addressed to the young men of the United States, 1827. Okay? They are warning us against this religious institution of Masonry. Bernard and Southwick call it the Church of Masonry. Today, we call it the LDS Church. Okay? Where did they work? Answer: at the building of King Solomon's Temple and many other Masonic edifices. How long did they work? Answer, 6 days. Did they not work on the seventh? Answer, they did not. Why so? Answer, because in 6 days, God created the heavens. Page 66. And earth, and rested on the seventh day. The seventh day, therefore, our ancient brethren, okay, keywords, our ancient brethren consecrated as a day of rest from their labors. Thereby enjoying more frequent opportunities to contemplate the glorious works of creation and adore their great creator. Did you ever return to the sanctum sanctorium? Apostates, right there. Anybody that has ever studied any kind of Freemasonry, anything of anything, you automatically know what the sanctum sanctorium is. Okay, did you ever return to the sanctum sanctorium, or pay attention, Holy of Holies of King Solomon's temple? Holiness to the Lord, the parchment paper. This stuff has meaning in magic. Okay? Holiness to the Lord is a magical phrase in Solomonic magic, in ceremonial magic. Okay? So you must relate this stuff. You cannot talk about King Solomon at all without the magic of Solomon. You can't do it. And if you do it, you're dismissing 90% of the story. Okay? So how can you talk about this stuff and separate it? How can you have a logical conversation, a meaningful conversation with somebody about King Solomon and not reference the magic that he is performing in the testaments of Solomon, the treaties of Solomon? You can't do it. You can't separate them, right? Because now you're lying and you're making stuff up. And that's not the way I want to know, right? I want to know the real. I want to know the truth. I don't want some fucking clown scholar opinion that has legitimately never read this fucking book, okay? These people build their careers, their livelihoods on this kind of stuff. Mormons are so guilty of this. And they never read the fucking book. They never read the book, but they talk about it as if there's some sort of authoritative figure on it because they have degrees. They have a popular YouTube channel, right? And you all fucking drink their Kool-Aid. In your defense, and none of us, myself included, knew any better. We did not know any better until the Mormon atheists brought it. Nobody's ever heard of this shit. Nobody has ever heard of this stuff, ever. Okay? So I don't fault them. I don't fault you. I don't fault me. Okay, because this stuff has been totally dismissed in history. But what this channel has done, though, repeatedly for 2 years now, is point out the inconsistency between scholarship and the legit book itself. That's all we do on this channel is we read the book. That's it. That's all we do. We read the book. And through doing that, we have destroyed careers. We've put people in check. We've, in 2 threads or less, we've taken down legit LDS Mormon historians. Okay? How do we do that? How do I, the Mormon atheist, how am I able to do that? Simply by reading the book. That's it. Secret exposed. I can't be more explicit and more silly sounding than saying, just read the book, man. Just read the book. This book is 116 pages long. Okay? You can read this book on the toilet. Okay? Did you ever return to the sanctum, sanctorium, or Holy of Holies of King Solomon's temple? Answer, I did. By what way? Answer, through a long porch or alley. See? You see how this stuff changes? Before, it wasn't like that. So this stuff evolves, okay? This is an evolution. They're creating this stuff as they go. Answer, through a long porch or alley. Did anything particular strike your attention on your return? Answer, there did. 2 large columns or pillars, one on the left hand and the other on the right. What was the name of the one on your left hand? Answer, Boaz. To denote strength. Right? Remember, that's what the column Boaz, that's what it means, is strength. And that is the column on the left hand. Okay? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That is the column of the one on your left hand is Boaz, and that denotes strength. What was the name of the one on your right hand? Answer, Yakin, denoting establishment. Remember in previous episodes, earlier in the book, we established that Boaz is strength and Yakin is establishment. Okay? What do they collectively allude to? Answer. Here we go with scriptures again. A passage in scripture wherein God has declared in his word, okay, in strength shall this house be established. In strength shall this house be established. There's your key words. In Boaz shall this house be Yakin. Okay, that sounds really silly, but that's what it is. Okay, strength and establishment. The passage in scripture wherein God has declared in his word, in strength shall this house be established. What were their dimensions? Answer, 18 cubits in height, 12 in circumference, and 4 in diameter. Okay, now remember in the previous episodes, I was like, well, don't you have to have the diameter to get the circumference, right? Right? Is that right? Am I is that is that how math works? All right, so you have to have the diameter to get the circumference. Or wait, I'm thinking radius, right? You have to have the radius to get, is that right? I don't fucking know. Anyways, I'm not a mathematician. I missed that day of school, kids. Okay, anyways, let's keep going. Now I have to like Google that. I can't like let that go. I have to like Google that because I have to think of that. All right. Anyways, I'm sorry. That sounds so stupid, but anyways, let's go. Were they adorned with anything? Answer: they were, with two large chapiters. Chapiters. One on each. Were they ornamented with anything? Answer: they were, with wreaths of net work, lily work, and pomegranates. What do they denote? Unity, peace, and plenty. Why so? Answer: network, from its connections, denote union. Lily work, from its whiteness and purity, okay, white and delightsome, denotes peace. And pomegranates, from the exuberance of its seed, denotes plenty. Right? Polygamy. Were those columns adorned with anything further? Answer: they were. Two large globes or balls, one of each, did one on each. Did they contain anything? Answer: they did. All the maps and charts of the celestial and terrestrial bodies. Why are they said to be so extensive? Answer: to denote the universality of Masonry, and that a Mason's charity ought to be equally extensive. What was their composition? Answer: molten or cast brass. Who cast them? Answer: our Grand Master, Hiram Abif. Mark this, page 67. This is our first notation of Hiram Abif. Okay? You must understand the Testaments of Solomon, apostate congregation. It will take you like, go watch YouTube videos. They're all over the place about King Solomon and the Testaments of Solomon, the treaties of Solomon. It's all over the place. It's so easy to find this stuff. Just a quick search will bring it up and you'll see it. Okay? You must know who Hiram Abif is. He is the Grand Master. Hiram Abif is the servant to King Solomon. Okay? Hiram Abif is also called the first Master Mason. Okay? Hiram Abif, the name Hiram. Why in Mormonism are all of these people's name Hiram? In early Mormonism, you remember Hiram was a title. It was not a name, it was a title. Right? In early Mormonism. And we get that through the literature. Right? And then people started naming their kids Hiram. But at first, Hiram was a title. The women called their husbands Hiram. Okay? Think of that, ladies. Okay? You had to refer to your husband as Hiram. And there was another name too. I want to say it was Joseph, but I don't remember. But there was another name as well, though, that was a title, and the women would call their men these names. Okay, and this is in the literature. So Hiram Abif is very important. All you Masons out there know this. Okay, LDS people not so much though. LDS people were kind of we're teaching them something about Freemasonry that they've never heard, because in the LDS world, Freemasonry is very much silly. It's interesting, but it's silly. William Morgan is a conspiracy theory. Okay? So, you know, all right. Anyways, let's get going. And I implore you to do your homework on the testaments and treaties of Solomon, please, apostates. And you will understand so much more of this. If you're into this Masonic stuff, right? Swallow your pride, you prideful bastard, swallow your pride. Read the Bible and start studying religion. Because all this shit literally correlates. Okay? You can read the Bible and you can legitimately read the passages that these people are talking about when they refer to the stonecutters. This language is in the Bible. These people are taking that language and picking the Bible apart and using it to justify this new thing called speculative Freemasonry, a new religious institution, the Restoration. And once you read the Bible, take your faith out of it, read it for what it is, and you will see the stonecutters and these kinds of things all throughout the Bible. But if you go back to the Greek, the stonecutters, right, in legit history, are the monument builders. Okay? Think of this stuff, congregation. Correlate this stuff. The monument builders of Egypt, the people that built the pyramids, the Sphinx, all of the unexplained stuff, okay, that the Bible says these stonecutters are responsible for. Whereas in the Greek, they tell you who these people are, right? Herodotus, Diodorus, I've talked about these folks on way previous episodes, like a year ago. I mention them here and there time to time, but I never really talk about them because it doesn't really pertain. It doesn't pertain to the subjects of the videos that I'm doing at the time. But that stuff very much pertains to this, right? The muse. Where do you think I get the muse from? What is the muse? What is the muse? Right? Come on, congregation. This stuff goes deep. I told you when we started this series, this shit gets deep, 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 deep. And I told you these are rabbit holes that if you decide to go down, some of them, like the light, for example, the Greek, this kind of stuff. This stuff will definitely change your reality. Okay. Herodotus, Diodorus, Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Younger. Uh, there's so many. There's so many authors, right? What is a Christ? What is the first Christ? What is a Christ? Okay. This stuff has meaning, right? This has legit meaning to it. So you have to pay attention to this stuff, congregation. Okay, I completely lost my place. Oh, here we go, over here. All right, answer. To denote the universality of Masonry, and that a Mason's charity ought to be equally extensive. What was their composition? Remember, we're talking about the globes on top of the pillars. Answer. Molten or cast brass. Who cast them? Our Grand Master, Hiram Abiy. Where were they cast? Answer. On the banks of the River Jordan, in the clay ground between Succoth, Succoth, and Zaradatha, Zaradatha, or Zarahemla. Oh, fuck, man. This stuff. Like, can you be any more obvious? Okay. Like, I don't know. Can you be any more obvious? All right. Where King Solomon ordered these and all other holy vessels to be cast. Were they cast sound or hollow? Answer. Hollow. What was their thickness? Answer. 4 inches or a hand breadth. Okay, think of the golden plates. Think of the descriptions. Think of Orson Hyde's description. Think of Orson Pratt's description. They are all 4 inches by 6 inches. Okay, all of them. All of the descriptions of the golden plates are all 4 inches by 6 inches. In the early days, okay, you can legit look right here. This book right here, History of Utah by H. Bancroft, he legitimately goes through and gives you all of the different stories of the golden plates and the thicknesses and all that stuff. And he gives you by what author, what the book is that they put it in, everything. This book is a legitimate encyclopedia style book. Okay. And it was published in 1889. Okay. That's the significance of this book. This book is a gold mine of Utah historical information from a just a historian, a legit historian's point of view that has no stake in the game. He's not for Mormonism. He's not against Mormonism. He's just legitimately writing history. That's all Bancroft is doing. Okay. And this book is fascinating. This book is one book in a volume. Okay. I think there's like 7 or 8 books in the volume. Okay, and this is one of those books in the history of Utah, in that volume that he writes. Okay, he starts in like the 1500s. Okay, it's really fascinating. It's a very fascinating glimpse into southwestern continental North America. Okay, it's in the 1800s. It's fascinating. All right, anyways, let's get back to this. We're almost done with this episode, congregation. Let's keep going. All right, what was their thickness? Answer: 4 inches or a handbreadth. Why were they cast hollow? Answer: the better to withstand inundations and conflagrations. Where the archives of Masonry and contained the Constitution, rolls, and records. So, according to this, the Constitution, rolls, and records, right? Where the archives of Masonry and contained the Constitution, rolls, and records are inside the globes on the pillars. That's why the globes are cast hollow, is so you can put the archives of Masonry and contain the Constitution, rolls, and records. Okay? What did you next come to? Answer: a long winding staircase, Jacob's ladder, with 3, 5, 7 steps or more. 3, 5, or 7 steps or more. What do the 3 steps allude to? Answer: the 3 principal supports in Masonry: wisdom, strength, and beauty. What do the 5 steps allude to? Answer: the 5 orders of architecture and the 5 human senses. Okay, the 5 orders of architecture and the 5 human senses. What are the 5 orders in architecture? Answer: the Tucson, Tuscan, the Doric, Doric, Ionic. What is Ionic life? Okay, in the beginning. Okay, it's not eternal life, it's Ionic life. If you go back to the Greek, it's Ionic life. Corinthian and composite. What are the 5 human senses? Answer: hearing, with those with ears to hear; seeing, with those with eyes that can see; feeling, smelling, and tasting. The first 3 of which have ever been deemed highly essential among Masons: hearing, to hear the word, ears to hear; seeing, to see the sign, eyes to see; and feeling, could arguably make this a reason here, to feel the grip, whereby one Mason may know another in the dark as well as the light. Page 68. What do the 7 steps allude to? Answer: the 7 sabbatical years, 7 years of famine, 7 years of building the temple, 7 golden candlesticks, right? Remember Southwick, one of his quotes was the Church of Masonry is what did he say? The lamp of Lucifer and the candlestick of Satan or something like that. I forget exactly what he said, but we'll read it later. But it's Southwick is stunning. All right. 7 wonders of the world, 7 planets, but more especially the 7 liberal arts and sciences, which are grammar, rhetoric, logic. Mormons are extremely good at rhetoric, right? Arithmetic, geometry. Okay, remember, geometry is number 5 in the 7 sciences. Okay, what does the G represent? Geometry and the Grand Master, not God, the Grand Master. Okay, and he says, the 5th science of the 7 science, that letter represents G. Okay, music and astronomy. For these and many other reasons, the number 7 has ever been held in high esteem, in high estimation among Masons. The number 7 has ever been held in high estimation among Masons. What did you next come to? Answer: the outer door of the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple, which I found partly opened, but closely tiled, TILED, by the junior warden. I'm sorry, TYLED, by the junior warden. How did you gain admission? Answer: by a pass and token of a pass, right? Remember, the pass and the token of a pass are 2 different things, and they have to be in the correct order. What was the name of the pass? Answer: Shibboleth. Shibboleth. What does it denote? Answer: plenty. Why so? Answer: from an ear of corn being placed at the Waterford. Why was this pass instituted? Answer: in consequence of a quarrel, which had long. Okay, now this answer, I want you to think of the Book of Mormon. Okay, listen to the Book of Mormon here. Okay, answer. Okay, so why was this pass instituted? Answer: in consequence of a quarrel which had long existed between Jephthah, JEPTHA, judge of Israel, and the Ephraimites. The Ephraimites. The Ephraimites. Utah. The Ephraimites. The latter, of whom had long been a stubborn, rebellious people, whom Jephthah had endeavored to subdue by lenient measures, but to no effect. The Ephraimites, being highly incensed against Jephthah for not being called to fight and share in the rich spoils of the Ammonitish war, Ammonitish, Ammon, Ammonitish, Ammon war. assembled a mighty army and passed over the river Jordan to give Jephthah battle. But he, being surprised of their approach, called together the men of Israel and gave them battle and put them to flight. And to make his victory more complete, he ordered guards to be placed at the different passes on the banks of the river Jordan, and commanded, if the Ephraimites passed that way, that they should pronounce the word Shibboleth. But they, being a different tribe, pronounced it Seboleth. Shibboleth is Shibboleth, and Seboleth is Seboleth. Okay? But they, being of a different tribe, pronounced it Seboleth, which trifling defect proved them spies. And dirty bastard spies, and cost them their lives. And there fell that day at the different passes on the banks of the river Jordan 40 and 2,000. This word was also used by our ancient brethren to distinguish a friend from foe. Shibboleth. This is actually in the Bible, okay? And has since been adopted as a proper password, okay? It has since been adopted as a proper password. These people are creating this to be given before entering any well-regulated and governed lodge of fellow craft masons. Okay? The fellow magicians of speculative Freemasonry. What did you next come to? Answer: the inner door of the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple, which I found partly opened, but closely tiled by the senior warden. How did you gain admission? Answer: by the grip and word. How did the senior warden dispose of you? Answer: he ordered me to be conducted to the worshipful master in the east, who informed me that I had been admitted into the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple for the sake of the letter G. Okay? Does it denote anything? Answer: it does. Deity, before whom we shall all bow with reverence, worship, and adore. It also denotes geometry, the fifth science, it being that on which this degree was principally founded. Thus ends the second degree of Masonry. Okay, congregation, that ends this episode. On the next episode, we are going to pick up on page 69, and we are going to talk about the third or Master Mason degree. And here's a little picture of that's in the book. Let's see. So this is where we get heavy. We're going to start getting into Hiram Abief, okay, the king of Tyre, okay? Let me give you a little example here. Okay. Well, let me start. Okay, let me start it. So this is where we're going to pick up on the next episode, okay? The third or Master Mason degree. The traditional account of the death and several burials and resurrection of Hiram Abief, the widow's son, as hereafter narrated, admitted as facts, this degree is certainly very interesting. The Bible informs us that there was a person of that name employed at the building of King Solomon's temple. But neither the Bible, the writings of Josephus, okay, who is Josephus? Antiquity of the Jews, okay, War of the Jews, okay, who is Josephus say he is? Okay, Josephus in the I think it's the Antiquity of the Jews. It's either the Antiquity or the War of the Jews. I don't remember which one it is, but he says, so the story of Prometheus. Okay, anybody know the story of Prometheus? You know, he was bound by chains, all this kind of stuff. And then he talks about, so that story is also the story of King Zedekiah. Okay. So Josephus says he is that person. Okay. I personally think Josephus is a plant. That's my personal opinion. I've read Josephus. I think he's a plant. Okay, and you'll have to read his stuff to understand why I think that. But I honestly think Josephus is a plant. All right. Anyways, let's keep going. Nor any other writings. Okay, William Morgan is talking about Josephus, apostates. Nor any other writings, however ancient, of which I have any knowledge, furnish any information respecting his death. It certainly is very singular that a man so celebrated as Hiram Abieph was an arbiter between Solomon, king of Israel, and Hiram, king of Tyre. Universally acknowledged as the third most distinguished man then living, and in many respects the greatest man in the world, should pass off the stage of action in the presence of King Solomon, 3,300 grand overseers and 150,000 workmen, with whom he had spent a number of years, and neither King Solomon, his bosom friend, nor any other among his numerous friends even recorded his death. So he's putting into question the entire story of King Solomon, because legit, there's, like, historically speaking, there's no evidence that there was ever a King Solomon or a King David. Like this, there's legitimately no evidence. And in 1827, this argument, they're making this argument even back then. Okay, that's where we're going to leave off, congregation. Before the world, a true history of Freemasonry without saying anything for or against it. It gets good. This gets good. Okay, so anyways, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are not monetized. We will never be monetized. The only way you can help this channel is to subscribe, like the videos, all that fun stuff. Share the videos, tell your friends. Their word of mouth is the best form of advertisement ever. To the commenter, thank you for that incredible comment. Wow, that was an amazing comment, man. I really appreciate that. You know who you are. You know your comment that you made. All I have to say is, wow, that is an amazing compliment. Thank you. And just think, my channel, I'm only using my cell phone and I'm reading a freaking book. I'm using earphones. I have no lights, I have no cameras, no microphones, nothing. And we're not monetized. So, your support, congregation, this is your channel. This is your channel. You guys are the ones that are pushing this channel. All I'm doing is reading, okay? And it's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's all because of you guys. So 100% from the bottom of my heart on this Christmas day, as we close out the night, Merry Christmas. In the words of the late, great Solomon Southwick, the ashes of Morgan will rise again. And here we are, congregation. Here we are. May you all have a blessed evening and day. Merry Christmas.